There are entire cities under the ground that we only discovered by accident. Cities that held 20,000 people. Cities with no record of who built them or why. Hey there, and welcome to the Sleepy Documentarian. Before we start, I'm curious. Where in the world are you listening from tonight? Drop your location in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. I know some of you are winding down after a long day. Maybe you're in bed already. Maybe you're hoping this will help you drift off. That's completely fine. That's what we're here for. A calm corner of the internet, where strange, true stories unfold at a pace that won't stress you out. Tonight, we're going underground. In 1963, a man in central Turkey decided to renovate his basement. Nothing dramatic, just knocking down a wall to make a bit more space. The kind of home improvement project that happens in houses all over the world, every single day. Except, when the wall came down, he didn't find another room, he found a tunnel. And that tunnel kept going. It dropped into the earth, splitting into passageways that led to more tunnels, which led to chambers, which led to entire halls carved out of solid rock. The air was cool and still. The walls showed clear marks of tools, deliberate cuts made by human hands. What he'd stumbled into wasn't a basement. It wasn't even a cellar. It was a city. An underground city that had been sealed and forgotten for centuries. Today, we call it Derinkuyu. It goes down about 85 meters. That's roughly the height of a 25-story building, except in reverse. Picture standing at the top of a tall building and looking down. That's how deep this city goes. And it's not just a hole in the ground, with some rooms carved out. It's a fully functional city, with ventilation shafts, wells, storage rooms, kitchens, wine presses, stables for livestock, and even chapels. Archaeologists estimate it could have held 20,000 people. Not for a weekend camping trip, for months, maybe even years. Think about that number for a second. 20,000 people. That's roughly the population of a small town, all of them living underground, in total darkness, sustained by a system that was engineered centuries ago with nothing but hand tools. The engineering is genuinely impressive. The ventilation shafts alone are a marvel. They drop through multiple levels, ensuring fresh air reached even the deepest chambers. Some of these shafts are as deep as modern skyscrapers are tall, and they still work. After all these centuries, the whole system still works. You can stand in the lowest level and feel fresh air moving through the tunnels. There are also these massive circular stone doors, some weighing half a ton, that could seal off sections of the city from the inside. They're shaped like enormous wheels, and they fit perfectly into grooves carved into the tunnel walls. One person could roll them into place and block an entire corridor. If invaders somehow found the entrance and made it inside, they'd hit one of these doors, and that would be the end of their expedition. They couldn't push through. They couldn't break through. They'd just have to turn around and leave. The doors are positioned strategically throughout the complex, not just at the entrance, but at key points deep inside, creating multiple layers of defense. It's the kind of design you'd expect from a military installation, not from a supposedly primitive ancient society. So who built it? And more importantly, why? The standard explanation is that it was a refuge. Central Turkey, or Cappadocia as the region is called, has been invaded repeatedly throughout history. Persians, Byzantines, Mongols, the list goes on. The region sits at a crossroads between empires, which historically has been a very uncomfortable place to live. The ability to vanish underground with your entire community, taking your food, your animals, your family, and just disappearing beneath the earth would have been incredibly useful. From that perspective, Derinkuyu makes sense. It's a bunker. A really, really big bunker. But here's the thing. If you're just hiding from an army for a few weeks, you don't need wine presses and chapels. You don't carve out 18 known levels of living space. You don't spend generations excavating millions of cubic feet of volcanic rock. You dig a hole, you stock it with food and water, and you wait for the danger to pass. That's panic. That's survival mode. But this is planning. This is architecture. This is a society saying, we need to be able to live down here, comfortably, for a very long time. And Derinkuyu isn't alone. There's another underground city nearby called Kaimakla, also massive, also incredibly well engineered, also unexplained. In fact, there are dozens of these complexes scattered across Cappadocia, many just a few kilometers apart. Some are small, just a few chambers. Others are sprawling labyrinths that haven't been fully mapped. Some researchers believe they're all connected by tunnels that run for miles beneath the surface. Long horizontal passageways linking one city to another, creating a network that would have allowed people to travel underground across vast distances without ever coming to the surface. If that's true, then what we've found so far is just the entrance to something much, much larger. The geology of the region supports this idea. Cappadocia is built on volcanic tuff, a type of rock that's relatively soft and easy to carve, but becomes harder when exposed to air, making it structurally stable. It's almost ideal for tunnel construction, and the landscape is riddled with caves and rock formations that would make it easy to hide entrances. The strangest part, no clear historical records describe these cities. No inscriptions, no builders' marks, no ancient texts saying, hey, we dug a city under the ground, here's why. You'd think a project this massive would be mentioned somewhere, in tax records, in military reports, in religious texts, somewhere, but there's nothing. It's as if whoever made them wanted to keep it secret, not just from invaders, but from history itself. And even now, parts of Derinkuyu remain unexplored. Some passageways are blocked by rubble or deliberately sealed. Some chambers have never been fully excavated because they're considered too dangerous or unstable. Archaeologists suspect there are deeper levels that haven't been mapped yet, areas that go even further down than the 85 meters we know about, which means we still don't know the full extent of what's down there. Local legends in the region speak of tunnels that stretch for incredible distances. Some say they go all the way to other cities, dozens of kilometers away. Others claim they lead to places that have never been discovered. Are these just stories? Maybe. But then again, Derinkuyu itself was just a story until someone knocked down a wall. So that's Turkey. But if you think underground cities are just a Mediterranean thing, let me take you to Mexico. In 2003, heavy rains in central Mexico opened up a sinkhole near the base of an ancient pyramid called the Temple of the Feathered Serpent. The pyramid is part of Teotihuacan, a massive city that once held over 100,000 people. It's one of the most studied archaeological sites in the Americas. Tourists visit it every day. Archaeologists have been working there for over a century, or at least, people thought they knew it. When the sinkhole appeared, a local archaeologist named Sergio Gomez decided to investigate. He rappelled down into the cavity with ropes and lights, expecting to find maybe a collapsed chamber or some kind of natural cave formation. Instead, he found that the opening wasn't natural at all. It was an entrance that had been deliberately sealed with enormous stones nearly 2,000 years ago. Behind those stones was a tunnel. The tunnel ran for about 100 meters, directly beneath the pyramid, descending gradually into the earth. The air inside was stale and undisturbed. No one had breathed it in 2 millennia. At the end were a series of sealed chambers, and inside those chambers, archaeologists found something they genuinely weren't expecting. Liquid mercury, pools of it, just sitting there in the darkness, shimmering in the beam of their flashlights like a river of silver. Now, mercury is rare. It's also extremely toxic. You can't just dig it out of the ground like iron or copper. It requires specific mining techniques and careful handling. Transporting it would have required sealed containers to prevent evaporation and poisoning. For a long time, Scholars didn't think pre-Columbian cultures in the Americas even used mercury. The textbooks said it was unknown. But here it was, sitting in sealed chambers beneath a pyramid, deliberately placed there for reasons no one can fully explain. No one knows why it's there. Some researchers think it was symbolic. In many ancient cultures, the underworld was associated with water, rivers, lakes, boundaries between the world of the living and the world of the dead. In Mesoamerican mythology, the underworld was often described as a watery place, a dark realm where the dead traveled through rivers and lakes to reach their final destination. The mercury might have represented an underworld river, a barrier that initiates had to cross during rituals. The liquid would have looked mysterious and otherworldly, especially by torchlight, moving and flowing like water, but heavier, denser, more like melted metal. Others think it was meant to look like stars. This theory is supported by what archaeologists found on the walls and ceiling of the tunnel. They were coated with powdered pyrite, a mineral that glitters. In the flickering light of torches, the ceiling would have sparkled and shimmered, looking like a night sky filled with stars. Combined with the reflective mercury below, you'd be walking through a recreated cosmos. Above you, stars. Below you, a mirror-like surface reflecting them. You'd literally be walking between heaven and earth, between the sky and the underworld. But here's the strange part. The tunnel was sealed, deliberately, completely. Massive stones were rolled into place, blocking the entrance. Then more stones were piled on top. Then dirt and rubble. For 2,000 years, no one could get in. The entrance was invisible. Whoever built it went to extraordinary lengths to ensure it stayed hidden. They didn't just close it, they erased it. And unlike Derinkuyu, this wasn't a refuge. It wasn't designed to protect people from invaders or natural disasters. It was a ritual space, a carefully constructed underworld, designed for something we still don't fully understand. Maybe it was used for initiation ceremonies. Maybe priests descended into the tunnel to communicate with gods or ancestors. Maybe it was a symbolic burial place for rulers, though no bodies have been found. We simply don't know. What we do know is that the effort required to build it was enormous, carving a 100-meter tunnel through volcanic rock, lining the walls with powdered minerals, transporting mercury from wherever it was mined, sealing it completely when the rituals were finished. These were not casual acts. They were deliberate, planned, and deeply important to whoever built them. And Teotihuacan has more tunnels. In 2018, ground-penetrating radar revealed another possible tunnel system beneath the Pyramid of the Moon. Still unexplored, still sealed. Earlier excavations in the 1970s found tunnels under the Pyramid of the Sun. Same story. Sealed chambers, offerings left behind. No clear explanation for what they were used for. The city above ground was public, grand, monumental. The Avenue of the Dead stretches for miles, flanked by massive pyramids and platforms where thousands of people would have gathered for ceremonies and festivals. But beneath it was another city, a hidden one, a secret city of tunnels and chambers that ordinary people never saw. And that duality, that split between what was shown and what was concealed, suggests that secrecy was just as important as spectacle. The rulers of Teotihuacan wanted to be seen. They built enormous pyramids that could be seen for miles, but they also wanted to hide things, important things, sacred things, things that were too powerful or too dangerous to be displayed in public. Which brings me to Peru. In the Peruvian Andes, there's a site called Chavin de Huantar. It dates back to around 1200 BC, long before the Inca. At first glance, it looks like a lot of other ancient temple complexes. Stone platforms, open plazas, carved reliefs depicting gods and mythological creatures. But beneath the surface is something genuinely unusual, something that suggests the people who built it understood things about human psychology that we're only beginning to rediscover today. The tunnels at Chavin weren't built for storage or defense or burial. They were built to mess with your head. The galleries are narrow and disorienting. Some passages are so tight, you have to squeeze through sideways, your shoulders scraping against the stone walls. The ceilings are low, forcing you to hunch over as you move through the darkness. Others suddenly open into larger spaces, where the acoustics change completely. Your footsteps echo differently. Your breathing sounds louder. It's disorienting in a way that's hard to describe unless you've experienced it. Beneath the floors, stone drains carry rushing water, creating a constant roar that echoes through the tunnels. The sound is omnipresent, surrounding you, making it impossible to determine where it's coming from. In total darkness, with water thundering below and echo bouncing off the walls in unpredictable ways, the space feels alive. It feels like something is moving through the tunnels with you, just out of sight. Archaeologists have done experiments at Chavin. They brought replica conch shell trumpets into the tunnels, instruments that were definitely used at the site based on archaeological evidence, and played them in the enclosed spaces. The sound was overwhelming, deep, booming, resonant. In the confined stone corridors, it didn't sound like a trumpet at all. It sounded like the roar of a jaguar or some other large predator. It sounded inhuman. Now imagine you're an initiate being led into these tunnels for the first time. You're in complete darkness. You can hear water rushing beneath your feet. Echoes surround you. Then suddenly, a blast of sound rips through the tunnel, so loud and so strange that it doesn't seem possible it came from a human instrument. Your heart is racing. Your senses are completely overwhelmed. You have no idea where you are or where you're going. That's not an accident. That's design. At the center of the complex is a massive stone carving called the Lanzon. It's about 15 feet tall, carved from a single piece of granite. It depicts a fanged deity with snakes for hair, clawed hands, and a face that seems to shift depending on the angle you view it from. The carving is positioned at the intersection of several tunnels, standing in a narrow shaft that rises through multiple levels of the complex. To reach it, you had to navigate the tunnels in complete darkness, guided only by sound and touch, and maybe the hand of a priest leading you forward. By the time you arrived, your senses would have been completely scrambled. You'd be disoriented, overwhelmed, possibly terrified. And then suddenly, torches would be lit, and this enormous fanged god would appear in front of you, seeming to materialize out of the darkness. This wasn't a metaphor. It wasn't symbolic architecture meant to represent something abstract. It was a machine, a sensory machine designed to alter perception, to break down ordinary consciousness and prepare people for what they believed was direct contact with the divine. The tunnels controlled everything: light, sound, movement, even the air you breathed. In some sections, the oxygen levels are noticeably lower, which can produce feelings of lightheadedness or euphoria. Combined with the sensory overload, the psychological effect would have been profound. And this raises an uncomfortable question. If ancient builders in Peru, over 3,000 years ago, could engineer spaces that manipulated sound, light, and human psychology with this level of sophistication, what else were they capable of? What other techniques did they develop that we've forgotten or never discovered? And how many other tunnels, in other parts of the world, were designed with purposes we can't even recognize because we're not asking the right questions? Because here's the thing. These stories aren't isolated curiosities. They're not random oddities scattered across the globe with no connection to each other. They're part of a pattern that appears in culture after culture, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, but telling remarkably similar stories. In China, there's a site called the Longyu Caves. In 1992, a group of farmers in Zhejiang province decided to drain a pond. The pond had been there for generations, Everyone assumed it was just a natural depression that had filled with water over time. But when they pumped the water out, they found hand-carved chambers beneath it. Massive chambers. The caves are enormous. Individual chambers reach heights of nearly 100 feet, with floor areas large enough to park several airplanes inside. The interiors are carefully shaped with flat walls, precisely carved corners, and pillars left standing to support the ceiling. Every surface shows parallel chisel marks, perfectly uniform, as if hundreds of workers systematically carved out the stone following some kind of master plan. In total, the caves required the removal of an estimated 1 million cubic meters of rock. Let me put that in perspective. That's roughly equivalent to excavating a cube of stone that's 100 meters on each side. That's not a weekend project. That's not even a lifetime project. That's generational. That's centuries of sustained effort involving thousands of workers, and yet there's no mention of it in any historical text. China has some of the most detailed historical records of any ancient civilization. They kept meticulous accounts of construction projects, military campaigns, natural disasters, everything. But there's no record of the Longyu Caves, no mention of who built them, when they were built, or why. No local legends explaining their purpose, no artifacts inside to give us clues. Just empty, silent chambers with walls covered in uniform chisel marks. When the caves were first discovered, archaeologists hoped they'd find something inside. Pottery, tools, inscriptions. Anything that would explain what they were used for. But the chambers are almost completely empty. A few scattered artifacts here and there, but nothing that provides clear answers. Some researchers have suggested they were quarries, carved to extract stone for construction projects elsewhere. But if that's the case, why finish the walls with decorative chisel marks covering every single surface? Quarries are functional. They're not pretty. You dig out the stone you need and leave rough walls behind. These chambers are finished, carefully finished. The walls are smooth and uniform. Others have proposed they were tombs or ritual sites, but no burials have been found. No altars, no offerings, no religious iconography carved into the walls. And here's the really strange part. Some of the caves are still flooded. The chambers that were discovered in 1992 were only accessible because the farmers drained the pond. But there are other sections, connected to the main chambers by passages that descend below the current water level, that remain submerged. No one knows what's down there. No one's ever drained those sections or sent divers in to explore them thoroughly. It's possible that artifacts, carvings, inscriptions, or other evidence remain sealed away under the dark water. For now, those areas remain inaccessible, adding another layer of mystery to a site that's already deeply puzzling. The deliberate erasure is the most unsettling part. If these were just quarries or storage facilities or even temples, why is there no trace of them in local memory or historical texts? It seems more likely that whoever built the Longyu Caves did so with a purpose we cannot yet identify, and then deliberately erased their work from the record. Whether that was to hide the purpose of the caves, to protect sacred knowledge, or simply because the builders themselves vanished for reasons we don't understand, we cannot say. What is clear is that the Longyu Caves should not exist as they do. They represent an enormous investment of time, labor, and planning. And then they were abandoned, sealed beneath water, and forgotten. For investigators and archaeologists, the site represents a profound challenge. The tool marks show undeniable human effort. The scale demonstrates sophisticated organization. But the absence of supporting evidence suggests something more, something we're missing. Did an ancient culture possess knowledge or techniques now lost to us? Were these chambers meant to serve as storage for something that has since been removed? Were they ritual sanctuaries used for practices we can no longer recognize? Or was the purpose something so different from our assumptions that we cannot even identify it when we're staring directly at the evidence. The caves remind us that human history is far from complete. They show that even in one of the world's most carefully chronicled civilizations, entire projects of staggering scale can be erased from memory. And they raise an uncomfortable question that echoes across all these stories. If a massive carved complex like Long Yu could vanish from history completely, what else might be missing? How many other sites lie hidden under lakes, hills, forests, or farmland, waiting to be uncovered by accident? Let me shift gears for a moment and talk about natural formations, because they're part of this story too. If Long Yu showed us how human hands could carve immense chambers and then erase them from history, Mammoth Cave in Kentucky shows how nature itself creates underground realms on a scale that dwarfs almost anything we can imagine. So far, more than 420 miles of passageways have been officially mapped in Mammoth Cave, making it the largest known cave system in the world. But explorers and speleologists are absolutely certain that number barely scratches the surface. Current estimates suggest the system could reach 600 miles, perhaps significantly more. Each year, experienced cavers push deeper into unexplored sections, charting new branches and side passages, only to find more corridors stretching away into the dark. Imagine an underground world extending from London to Paris. That's Mammoth Cave, a labyrinth so vast that it's difficult even to comprehend. If you try to walk every mapped passage end to end, it would take you weeks. The passages themselves vary wildly in character. Some are broad and smooth, shaped by underground rivers that cut through limestone over millions of years. You could drive a truck through some of these corridors. Others narrow into jagged crawl spaces, where the air grows heavy and stale, and explorers must squeeze forward inch by inch, their helmets scraping against the ceiling. There are chambers so large that early explorers compared them to underground cathedrals. Standing in such a space, with ceilings vanishing into shadow high above, and walls echoing with every footstep, it's easy to feel as though you've entered another dimension entirely. The scale is inhuman. The silence is absolute, except for the occasional drip of water or the distant rush of an underground stream. And the deeper you go, the stranger it becomes. Indigenous peoples used parts of the cave thousands of years ago. Archaeologists have found torches, woven sandals, mining tools, and even human remains preserved in the dry air of certain chambers. These early visitors ventured miles into the darkness with nothing but reed torches for light, extracting minerals like gypsum from the cave walls. In the 19th century, Mammoth Cave was mined for saltpeter, a key ingredient in gunpowder. During the War of 1812, workers excavated tons of cave sediment, processing it in wooden vats that still sit in some of the chambers, slowly decaying in the unchanging underground air. Tourists soon followed, drawn by the cave's sheer scale and by its ominous reputation. By the mid-1800s, guided tours were a regular occurrence. Guides told stories of ghostly lights flickering in distant passages, of winds rushing through sealed corridors as if unseen forces were breathing somewhere below, of strange sounds echoing from sections of the cave that had never been fully explored. There were also darker tales, stories of visitors who strayed from the group, lost their bearings in the endless twisting passages, and were never seen again. Some of those stories are documented. Some are probably exaggerated, but the underlying fear is real. In a cave system this large, with this many branches and dead ends, getting lost is a genuine danger. One of the most famous incidents involves Floyd Collins, an experienced caver who became trapped in a narrow passageway in 1925. He was exploring a section called Sand Cave, trying to find a new entrance that could be commercialized for tourism. While squeezing through a tight crawl space, a rock shifted and pinned his leg. Efforts to rescue him captured the attention of the entire nation. Reporters camped at the site, relaying updates by telegraph. Engineers, miners and volunteers worked around the clock trying to reach him. They dug a shaft. They tried to widen the passage. They brought him food and water through the narrow gap. But after 2 weeks, Collins died, his body wedged in stone, unreachable. His story cemented Mammoth Cave's reputation not just as a natural wonder, but as a place that could claim lives without mercy. It's not malicious, it's indifferent. The cave simply exists, vast and uncaring, and humans who enter it do so at their own risk. Even today, experienced cavers describe the system with a mixture of awe and unease. Some speak of hearing voices carried through the tunnels, distorted by echoes and distance, until they seem to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Others recall the disorienting effect of losing all light when a lantern fails or batteries die. The darkness in a cave isn't like darkness on the surface. There's no ambient light, no adjustment period where your eyes adapt. It's absolute, pressing, suffocating. In those moments, people report that their minds begin to invent things, shapes that aren't there, sounds that don't exist. The human brain isn't designed for that level of sensory deprivation, and it starts filling in the gaps with phantom sensations. Mammoth is more than a cave. It's an environment designed, by pure geological chance, to strip away human reference points. In those moments, people say you feel the cave itself is alive, breathing, watching, waiting. The depth adds to the sense of unease. While Mammoth doesn't plunge vertically like Veryovkina Cave in Georgia, which descends more than 7,000 feet straight down, its endless horizontal sprawl creates its own unique terror. At least in a vertical descent, explorers know the direction they must climb to escape. Up is always up. But in Mammoth, the danger lies in its scale and complexity. Corridors branch and twist and reconnect in patterns that defy easy navigation. Without careful mapping, without leaving markers, a wrong turn can lead to miles of wandering in the dark, with no way back. The result is a different kind of depth, not of distance, but of infinity. You could walk for days and still not reach the edge of the known system, let alone the unexplored sections beyond. And despite centuries of exploration, most of the cave remains untouched. Whole sections are closed off to the public, some because of hazardous air pockets where carbon dioxide builds to dangerous levels, others because the passages are too unstable or too difficult to navigate safely. And many simply because they've never been surveyed, never been mapped, never been entered by anyone in recorded history. What lies in those sealed chambers is anyone's guess. The possibility of new species, creatures that have evolved in total darkness, remains very real. Biologists have found unique species in Mammoth Cave that exist nowhere else on Earth. Pale, eyeless fish, colourless crustaceans, insects that have adapted to survive with virtually no food sources. There could be archaeological sites in the unexplored sections, ancient indigenous sites that were used once and then abandoned, leaving artifacts behind in chambers no modern person has ever seen. There could be massive unexplored halls, larger than anything currently known, their ceilings vanishing into darkness hundreds of feet above. Mammoth Cave proves that even in a world mapped from orbit, where satellites track our every movement and GPS pinpoints our location to within a few feet, there are still places on this planet where the unknown stretches for hundreds of miles, where mystery isn't a metaphor, it's literal, physical, measurable. That's what makes the system so genuinely unsettling. If natural geology can produce an underground world on this scale, with endless corridors, hidden chambers, toxic pockets of air, rivers running in silence for miles, then secrecy beneath the surface isn't just a human invention. It's part of the planet itself. And if caves created by nature can swallow lives, remain unexplored after centuries, and still hold miles of uncharted territory, what might lie inside the tunnels built deliberately by human powers? Where secrecy isn't an accident of geology, but the very purpose.
Because underground networks aren't just relics of the past. They're not just ancient mysteries or natural wonders. They're being built right now, today, by governments with unlimited resources and motivations we can only guess at. In northern China, one of the largest subterranean systems on Earth was constructed not thousands of years ago, but in the last few decades. It's known as the Underground Great Wall. Constructed by the People's Liberation Army Rocket Force, this labyrinth reportedly stretches more than 3,000 miles. That's longer than the entire width of the continental United States. To put it another way, if you could walk these tunnels in a straight line, you could walk from New York to Los Angeles and still have miles left over. Its purpose is not disputed. It was designed to store, move, and protect China's nuclear arsenal. But nearly everything else about it remains classified. The Chinese government has never released detailed information about the system's extent, capacity, or specific locations. What we know comes from fragments, satellite imagery showing suspicious excavation sites, rare leaked photographs, investigative reports piecing together clues from construction contracts and eyewitness accounts. They show entrances disguised as hillsides, covered with camouflage netting, or hidden behind what appear to be normal buildings. Massive blast doors that blend seamlessly into rock faces. Long reinforced corridors where missile transporters can move unseen by satellites or surveillance. Analysts believe the tunnels link together storage chambers, launch bays, maintenance facilities, and underground command centers. Some reports even suggest entire cities have been constructed within the network to house military personnel, technicians, and support staff for extended periods. The engineering effort behind it is staggering. Carving thousands of miles of tunnel through rock, much of it through mountains, would have required enormous tunnel boring machines, decades of sustained labor, and a budget that would make most national infrastructure projects look trivial. Chinese sources say the project began during the height of the Cold War, when the risk of a nuclear first strike from the Soviet Union or the United States was seen as a genuine, immediate threat. By dispersing missiles and launch systems underground, moving them constantly through the tunnel network, China ensured its arsenal could survive a first strike and retaliate no matter what happened above. It's a terrifying kind of insurance policy. Even if every Chinese city were destroyed, even if the entire country were turned to glass, the missiles hidden in the underground Great Wall could still launch. Estimates of what lies inside vary widely. Official figures put China's nuclear arsenal at around 500 warheads, but some US defense analysts argue the number could be far higher, with many of those weapons concealed in the underground Great Wall, never declared, never counted in arms limitation treaties. If true, China may possess far more strategic power than it publicly admits. The tunnels allow weapons to be hidden, moved at will, and potentially launched from unpredictable locations scattered across thousands of miles, making them nearly impossible to track or target. First-hand accounts from defectors and leaked state documents describe networks of reinforced bunkers, train tunnels large enough to carry mobile launch systems on specialized rail cars, and massive maintenance facilities buried hundreds of feet underground where missiles can be serviced, repaired, and prepared for launch. The tunnels are said to connect entire provinces, stretching through the mountains of central China and linking critical military bases together in a web that no foreign intelligence agency fully understands. For comparison, the United States built hundreds of individual missile silos during the Cold War, fixed sites, each housing a single intercontinental ballistic missile. They were spread across the Great Plains in states like Montana, North Dakota, and Wyoming. But they were stationary. You could identify them from satellite photos. You could count them. You could theoretically target them. China's approach is different. It's a shadow network that can shift and hide. Mobile launchers move through the tunnels on unpredictable schedules. Launch sites can be scattered across thousands of miles of underground passages. Striking at it would be like trying to hit a target that's constantly moving through a maze you can't see into. The secrecy around the underground Great Wall has fueled debate and speculation for decades. In 2009, a Chinese state television segment showed brief footage of missile transporters moving through underground corridors, confirming what analysts had long suspected. Beyond that, almost nothing has been officially disclosed. Western researchers have attempted to map the system through satellite data, tracking excavation spoil piles and monitoring construction activity. But only fragments are known. The true scale, the full capacity, the exact locations of critical nodes, all remain hidden. The comparisons are stark. Derinkuyu sheltered 20,000 people beneath Turkey's soil. Mammoth Cave winds for hundreds of miles through Kentucky's limestone. But the underground Great Wall surpasses them both in length, in purpose, and in the implications of what it represents. It's not a relic of survival or a natural wonder. It's a modern fortress, dug in silence, designed to conceal weapons that could end civilization on the surface. That continuity is telling. From ancient sanctuaries carved for survival to modern bunkers built for nuclear war, the underground remains the ultimate safeguard. Thousands of years ago, people sealed themselves away to survive floods, invasions, or catastrophes they couldn't control. Today, governments seal away their most dangerous arsenals for exactly the same reason. The instinct is the same. When the stakes are highest, when survival itself is at risk, power is hidden below. Most of what lies inside the underground Great Wall will likely never be seen by the public. Entrances are sealed, maps are classified, and the system is constantly expanding, always growing, always pushing deeper into mountains and farther across provinces. What is known is enough to prove that even in the age of satellites and constant surveillance, where it seems like nothing can be hidden, the most important infrastructure can still vanish from view if it's built beneath the surface. In the Ural Mountains of Russia rises a peak with a reputation unlike any other, Mount Yamantau. From the outside it looks ordinary, a rugged, forested mountain range dotted with small villages. But intelligence agencies, satellite images, and scattered reports tell a very different story. They describe the mountain as sealed, honeycombed with tunnels, and guarded with unusual, almost obsessive secrecy. For decades, Mount Yamantau has been at the center of one of the greatest mysteries of the Cold War and beyond. The story first came to wider attention in the 1990s, as the Soviet Union collapsed and Russia transitioned into its new identity. American satellites had already been tracking unusual activity in the area for years. They showed massive excavation projects around the mountain, enormous spoil piles of excavated rock appearing on the surface.
construction of rail lines and highways leading directly into the mountainside, whole towns springing up seemingly overnight to house workers. The effort was enormous, rivaling the largest military-industrial projects of the Cold War. This wasn't a small research facility or a modest bunker. This was construction on a scale usually reserved for entire cities. Yet, Russia never explained what it was building. When pressed by Western governments and international observers, Russian officials gave contradictory answers. At times, they claimed the site was nothing more than a mining operation. In other statements, it was described as a food storage facility for the Russian people. In yet another explanation, it was supposedly a warehouse for national treasures, cultural artifacts being protected from potential theft or destruction. None of these explanations match the scale of the project. A warehouse doesn't require entire railroads driven directly into a mountain. A food depot doesn't explain why thousands of workers spent decades excavating chambers large enough to be visible from space. A mining operation doesn't require the level of security and secrecy that surrounds Yamantau. The answers only deepened the mystery. American analysts suspected something much more serious. A vast underground complex built specifically for nuclear war. During the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union developed networks of bunkers and command posts designed to survive a first strike. Places where government leaders, military commanders, and essential personnel could continue operating even after the surface had been devastated. But Yamantau appeared to go far beyond that. The scale suggested not just a bunker for a few hundred leaders, but an entire subterranean city, capable of housing tens of thousands, perhaps more. Reports claimed it could store weapons, accommodate command centers, provide shelter for Russia's leadership and military in the event of global catastrophe, and possibly even maintain industrial production underground. If accurate, Yamantau isn't just a place to hide during a nuclear war, it's a place to survive it, to continue as a functioning government while the rest of the world burns. What made Yamantau especially ominous was the timing. Construction continued at full pace through the 1990s, even as Russia was experiencing near-total economic collapse. The government claimed it could not pay wages. Pensions went unpaid for months. Basic services broke down. The military was falling apart, with soldiers going hungry and equipment rusting in fields. Yet through all of this, enormous resources continued to pour into Yamantau. Construction never stopped. The excavation continued. Workers kept digging deeper into the mountain, even as the rest of the country struggled to function. Why was Yamantau considered so important that it survived when so many other projects were abandoned? What could possibly justify that level of investment during a national crisis? First-hand accounts from those living near the site describe heavy security and total secrecy. Entire towns were declared off-limits to outsiders. Roads leading toward the mountain were blocked by checkpoints. Armed guards restricted movement. Locals were warned, sometimes threatened, not to ask questions about what was happening inside the perimeter. Some workers reportedly lived in closed cities nearby. These are a peculiar remnant of Soviet-era secrecy. Entire towns that don't appear on maps, where residents need special permits to enter or leave, and where the entire economy revolves around a single classified project. Their lives were tied entirely to Yamantau. They worked there. They lived in housing provided by the project. Their children attended schools funded by it, and they were forbidden from discussing anything they saw or did. To this day, the area remains sensitive, heavily patrolled, shielded from prying eyes. Journalists who have tried to investigate the site have been turned away, sometimes detained. Foreign intelligence agencies monitor it constantly, but from a distance. No one gets close without permission. Satellite images confirmed what locals hinted at: Vast spoil piles of excavated rock appeared on the mountainside, visual proof of massive tunneling operations below. The sheer volume of material removed suggests excavation on a scale comparable to major mining operations, but with no corresponding export of minerals or ore. Rail lines were built directly into the mountain, disappearing through enormous doors cut into the rock face. The kind of infrastructure you'd need if you were moving heavy equipment, supplies, or weapons deep underground on a regular basis. Analysts compared the visible infrastructure to known nuclear command complexes, like Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado, which houses NORAD. But Yamantau appeared to be on a much larger scale. The excavation was deeper, the support infrastructure more extensive, the security even tighter. The true scale is still unknown and hotly debated. Some reports suggest Yamantau could cover more than 400 square miles of underground space. If accurate, that's an area larger than New York City. Enough to contain not just bunkers, but entire industrial facilities, power generation plants, water treatment systems, food production, medical facilities, everything needed for long-term survival. Other estimates suggest it could support a population of 60,000 for months, perhaps years. That's not a bunker. That's an underground nation. A complete parallel civilization hidden inside a mountain, waiting for a future most people hope will never come. The secrecy continues into the present day. Russia has never offered a consistent, believable explanation for Yamantau. Western intelligence agencies have never been able to confirm definitively what lies inside. To this day, it remains one of Russia's most closely guarded secrets, treated with the same level of classification as nuclear launch codes. The silence has left the field wide open to speculation and theory. Some analysts argue it's a continuity of government facility, designed to keep Russia's leadership alive and functional through a nuclear war. A place where the president, key ministers, military commanders, and essential personnel could retreat and continue governing, even if Moscow and every other major city were destroyed. Others believe it houses nuclear weapons or production facilities. Despite international treaties limiting nuclear arsenals, Yamantau could provide a way to hide weapons from inspectors, maintaining a larger stockpile than officially declared. The most extreme theories suggest it could contain research laboratories working on classified weapons programs, or storage facilities for so-called doomsday devices, weapons designed not just to destroy enemy targets, but to render the entire planet uninhabitable, ensuring that if Russia falls, everyone falls. Whatever the truth, the unanswered questions make Yamantau one of the most unsettling sights on Earth. Unlike ancient ruins where mystery lingers because time has erased the evidence, Yamantau is deliberately hidden, actively maintained, fiercely protected by one of the world's most powerful militaries. It shows that secrecy underground is not a thing of the past. It's not just a historical curiosity. It's alive today, being expanded today, guarded by soldiers with orders to shoot first and ask questions never. And yet, even with all the satellite images, analyst reports, leaked documents, and eyewitness accounts, the strangest claims about Yamantau don't come from governments at all. They come from people who say they've been inside places like it. Few stories illustrate this better than the case of Phil Schneider and the Dulce base. Phil Schneider was a geological engineer who claimed to have worked on deep underground military construction projects in the United States during the 1970s and early 1980s. According to his own testimony, delivered in a series of public talks during the mid-1990s, he wasn't just involved in building tunnels. He claimed to have witnessed and survived one of the strangest and most terrifying encounters ever reported beneath the earth. Schneider's background, at least the parts that can be verified, suggest he was indeed involved in government construction work. He had security clearances. He worked for contractors that built sensitive installations. But what he claimed to have experienced goes far beyond conventional military engineering. In his talks, Schneider described a hidden facility near Dulce, New Mexico, a small town in the northern part of the state, not far from the Colorado border. Remote, sparsely populated, the kind of place where unusual activity might go unnoticed or unreported. He said, the base was built as part of a vast network of what he called DUMBS, deep underground military bases, installations linked together by high-speed tunnels running beneath the country, some supposedly extending for hundreds of miles. These facilities, according to Schneider, were not just bunkers or storage sites. They were research centers where genetic experiments and highly classified projects were conducted, far from public view. But Schneider's most explosive claim was that the Dulce base was not controlled solely by humans. He said that while excavating a section of tunnels in 1979, workers broke through into a cavern that was already occupied, that the space they'd accidentally breached wasn't empty. Inside, according to Schneider, were non-human entities, beings that had apparently been there long before the human construction crews arrived. According to his account, the accidental breach sparked a firefight. Schneider claimed he was wounded by a weapon unlike anything known to conventional science, some kind of directed energy weapon that burned part of his chest and hand, leaving scars he displayed during his presentations. He said dozens of soldiers and construction workers were killed in the incident, bodies removed. Families told their loved ones died in industrial accidents or training exercises. From that moment forward, Dulce Base was allegedly operated as a joint facility, shared space, with both human and non-human occupants, working in separate sections of the underground complex, each side maintaining their own areas, their own projects, their own secrets.
The details Schneider provided were sensational. He described laboratories where experiments supposedly blended human and animal DNA, tanks filled with biological matter he couldn't identify, holding areas for subjects of unknown origin, and multiple levels to the base, each deeper than the last, each more restricted based on security clearance. The deeper you went, according to Schneider, the stranger the research became. The upper levels were conventional, storage, command centers, barracks. But the lower levels, the ones most personnel never accessed, supposedly contained things that would fundamentally challenge our understanding of reality. Of course, none of these claims have ever been verified. No hard evidence has emerged that proves Dulce Base exists. No documents have surfaced confirming Schneider's story. No other witnesses have come forward with corroborating accounts. To this day, official sources dismiss his testimony as complete fabrication, the product of either mental illness, deliberate hoaxing, or a combination of both. And yet, what keeps the story alive isn't just Schneider's testimony, it's how it fits within the broader pattern we've already explored. Governments and militaries clearly value underground secrecy. That's not speculation, that's documented fact. From China's 3,000 miles of nuclear tunnels to Russia's Mount Yamantau, enormous projects exist that the public knows almost nothing about. Projects that cost billions, that take decades to complete, that involve thousands of workers, all kept secret through classification, compartmentalization, and intimidation. If those projects are admitted, at least in their basic existence, How much more could remain completely unacknowledged? How many facilities might exist that aren't just classified, but entirely off the books? The United States has a documented history of secret underground installations. Cheyenne Mountain, Raven Rock, Site R, Mount Weather. These are confirmed facilities, some of which weren't publicly acknowledged for decades after they were built. They house command centers, communications equipment, and backup government operations designed to function during national emergencies. So the concept of deep underground military bases isn't itself controversial. What's controversial is Schneider's claim about what might be happening inside them. Even among locals in Dulce, stories have circulated for years about unusual activity. Residents have spoken of strange lights in the sky, particularly near Archuleta Mesa, the location where Schneider claimed the base was located. Unexplained sounds deep in the rock, like machinery running far below the surface. Military-style helicopters flying low without any visible markings or identification numbers. Cattle mutilations in the area have been reported for decades. Animals found dead with precise surgical cuts, organs removed, blood drained, but no tracks or evidence of predators. Local ranchers have filed reports. Some have taken photographs. The incidents are real, whatever their cause. Combined with Schneider's claims, the legend of Dulce Base has become one of the most enduring underground conspiracy stories in the United States. It spawned books, documentaries, endless forum discussions, and investigation by researchers who range from serious journalists to enthusiastic amateurs. Critics point out that Schneider's account was inconsistent at times. Details changed between different presentations. He provided no physical proof of his wounds being caused by unknown weapons rather than conventional burns or injuries. His background, while including legitimate government work, couldn't be verified to the extent he claimed. But supporters argue that he paid the ultimate price for speaking out. In January 1996, Schneider was found dead in his apartment in Wilsonville, Oregon. He was discovered with a catheter tube wrapped around his neck. The official ruling was suicide. To those who believe his story, it was silencing, an elimination disguised as self-inflicted death. They point to the suspicious circumstances, the fact that Schneider had reportedly told friends he feared for his life, that he'd said if anything happened to him, it wouldn't be suicide. His death has never been satisfactorily explained, to the satisfaction of those who followed his story. And whether you believe his claims or not, the fact remains that a man who spoke publicly about classified underground installations died under circumstances his family and supporters describe as highly suspicious. What makes the Dulce Base story important, regardless of its literal truth, is what it represents. Even as a legend, even as an unverified account, it reflects the same themes found throughout human history: secrecy below ground, hidden chambers sealed from public eyes, projects carried out in silence, while the world above carries on unaware. From Derinkuyu to Teotihuacan, from Chavin to Yamantau, every site we've explored points to the same conclusion. The underground has always been where humanity hides what it cannot explain, what it cannot control, or what it wants to keep safe from view. In ancient times, it was survival and ritual, protection from invaders and catastrophes, sacred spaces for transformation and communion with forces beyond ordinary understanding. In modern times, it's weapons, bunkers, command centers, and perhaps, if we take Schneider's story as even containing a grain of truth, experiments we are not supposed to know about. Research that crosses lines we didn't even know existed. So where does all of this leave us? We've followed tunnels from Turkey to Peru, from China to the United States, and through legends that span cultures across the entire globe.
Some were carved to protect whole populations. Others were built for worship, for ritual, for purposes that alter consciousness itself. Others are sealed for military power, for weapons that could end civilization, for projects so classified that even acknowledging their existence is forbidden. A few of these sites are openly acknowledged. Derinkuyu is a tourist attraction. Teotihuacan welcomes visitors every day. Mammoth Cave offers guided tours, but many remain classified, restricted, or entirely unexplored. All of it points to one inescapable fact. The underground has always been where humanity hides what matters most. Cities that could shelter thousands, arsenals that could destroy nations, secrets that governments will kill to protect. All buried in darkness, waiting to be uncovered. And here's what keeps me up at night. We only discover these places by accident. Derinkuyu was found because someone knocked down a wall during a home renovation. The tunnels beneath Teotihuacan were revealed by a sinkhole after heavy rain. The Longyu caves were hidden under a pond until farmers decided to drain it. None of these were found through careful research or systematic searching. They were stumbled upon, uncovered by pure chance. Which raises the most unsettling question of all. If these enormous, complex, carefully engineered sites remained hidden for centuries or millennia, what else is down there? How many other underground cities lie beneath our feet, their entrances sealed or forgotten? How many ritual chambers remain unexplored, still holding their mercury rivers and glittering walls? How many modern military complexes exist that we'll never hear about, expanding silently beneath mountains and deserts? The Earth seems to hold another layer of history just below the surface. Another world that exists parallel to ours, hidden by nothing more than a few feet of soil or rock. And the deeper we look, the more we find. Not answers, just more tunnels, more chambers, more questions that can't be easily answered. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the underground has always been where we put the things we can't explain, the things we can't control, the things that frighten us or inspire us, or that we need to protect from those who would misuse them. Or maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe humans have always known, instinctively, that the safest place to hide anything, whether it's people or weapons or knowledge or secrets too dangerous to speak aloud, is where no one thinks to look. Beneath their feet. Whether they're in the darkness, in the silence, in places that can remain sealed for thousands of years, waiting, patient, holding their secrets until someone, somewhere, accidentally breaks through a wall, or drains a pond, or knocks down a barrier they didn't know was there. And then, suddenly, the hidden becomes visible, the forgotten becomes known, and we're left standing at the entrance to something we never knew existed. Staring down into darkness, wondering what else we haven't found yet. That's the real story here. Not any single tunnel or city or base, but the pattern, the consistency across time and culture and purpose. The fact that everyone, everywhere, has looked at the ground beneath their feet and thought, that's where we'll hide what matters. That's where we'll go when the world above becomes too dangerous. That's where we'll build what we don't want others to see. That's where we'll preserve what must not be lost. The ancient Hopi speak of emergence, of ancestors who lived below and climbed upward to reach this world. In Tibetan Buddhism, there are legends of Shambhala, a hidden kingdom beneath the mountains. In Cappadocia, 20,000 people could vanish underground and live for months. In China, 3,000 miles of tunnels hide weapons that could end the world. Different times, different purposes. Same instinct. Go down, hide below. The earth will keep your secrets, and it has. For thousands of years it has kept them, only giving them up when we stumble into them by accident, forcing us to confront the uncomfortable reality that we don't know our own planet as well as we think we do. We map the surface. We track every mountain and valley from orbit. We count buildings and roads and cities from space. But underground is still unknown, still mysterious, still capable of hiding cities, chambers, tunnels, and facilities that could be directly beneath our feet without us having any idea they're there. That's why these stories matter. Not because they're ancient curiosities or modern conspiracies, but because they remind us that mystery still exists, that despite all our technology and surveillance and satellite imagery, there are still places we haven't seen, still secrets we haven't uncovered, still depths we haven't reached. And some of those depths, some of those secrets might be just a few feet below where you're sitting right now, hidden, waiting, holding truths we weren't meant to find, or maybe truths we're not ready for yet. If that kept you awake longer than you planned, there's another story waiting for you on screen now. Sleep well.